welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya. Undercover reportage by the Guardian newspaper in the United Kingdom and other publications has unmasked a shadowy Israeli figure and his so-called team who meddled in elections and tried to topple governments. Our next story, a second conviction by a military court in Indonesia, this time of 4 former soldiers charged with the murder of 4 West Papuans last August. And last, a senior US defense official visits Taiwan after close to 4 years, and a top opposition leader from Taiwan takes a delegation to China. From Africa to Asia and beyond, a secretive Israeli private operator's sweep of the world political field has been revealed by The Guardian and other media outfits. They were hot on the trail of Jorge since 2018. He has also worked alongside other outfits known to influence more than 30 elections, often coming at the cost of democracy, spreading disinformation, using hacking tools to manipulate elections. Prashant from People's Dispatch joins us from the studio on the revelations. So, Prashant, the sheer scale of yet another spy ops, black ops, it's one after the other. So, what do we know so far?
Right. So just to sort of lay the ground, this is based on a long investigation by reporters from across the world under the banner of what is called Forbidden Stories. They've been doing a lot of stories on what is now increasingly being called disinformation, which is a very organized field. We see this in India, we see this in many other parts of the world. So what they have uncovered is basically this agency based out of Israel led by this guy called Tal Hanan, which claims that it has interfered in at least over 30 presidential level elections in the past many years. Now, I think first of all, we must put it on the table that a lot of this is based on the claims he has made. And now, while he was making these claims, he was, of course, the reporters had talked to him as potential clients.
Right.
So there is, of course, the possibility of a huge level of exaggeration of their capabilities. So whether it was actually as big a deal as he claimed it, or was it actually as efficient, is a big question, and there's no real clear answer to that. Nonetheless, even the details we have got till now indicate the existence of what is, quite a strong network which is engaged in this kind of activities of influencing elections, of influencing opinion, of creating discord and polarization, which is generally, we saw this earlier with the Cambridge Analytica,
Right.
Company and its work as well. In fact, this Team Jorge, as it is called, is believed to have worked with Cambridge Analytica as well on various issues. Now, I think 2 or 3 aspects that we need to talk about. One is that he claims that he has, their group has basically control over 30,000 bots or fake accounts, which have a long history, which is important because that basically means that they are not just fake account, those fake profiles with 1 follower or no
Right.
activity, something like that, which you see on social media. But according to them, and according to the journalists who covered it, these are accounts which have a long history of activity, which gives them a particular amount of legitimacy. So when an account like that tweets or posts, it's not that you see it and you instantly are like it's fake, right? Because there's no activity otherwise. So that's one aspect. And we're talking about a huge number, about 30,000 accounts. Then there is also the claim that he has access to, or they have a kind of software which enables the creation of a website on which content can be posted, which is, of course, again, fake, polarizing, all that kind of stuff,
Right.
or influences people in a certain direction. And then these are then amplified by these fake accounts, which gives an impression that, this is the truth, because how a lot of us now measure truth these days by the fact that we see articles on what seem like legitimate sites, and then these are shared by a lot of people, and then when you see that, you get the impression that okay, there is some amount of truth to this claim. So those are 2 elements of the campaign. He is also claimed, and again the reporters have verified, that there is the ability to hack Gmail accounts or the Telegram, the chat service Telegram, and how these can be used to sort of push certain kinds of information, make insinuations, disrupt the campaigns and activities of people who were involved in political campaigns, for instance, disrupt their lives in some senses. So that is the other claim that he makes. And he's, of course, there have been some specific instances cited, including the Kenyan election, which happened recently. Somebody close to who was finally the person who was elected as president, William Ruto, was apparently targeted, and his Telegram account was hacked, and some messages were delivered seeming like he was delivering those messages apparently. So that is one instance that you talked about. There is also some news about their involvement in India. It's not exactly clear how it is, but we are seeing campaigns in various countries in Africa,
Right.
in Asia. There are some claims that he claimed that he was involved in some campaigns in the US, though not political campaigns, so it's not clear yet what exactly they are. And I think overall the network they've created is pretty much in parallel or on the lines of very similar networks that we've seen in the past, where technology is sort of used to create this kind of large superstructure, if you will, of fake opinion and fake news, of campaigns, of agendas, which gives ordinary people the impression that there is something happening around these lines. So you spread lies, you spread fake news, you push campaigns which are meant to polarize people, which basically means that in election campaigns, all these nowadays make a huge difference because
Right.
there's such an inflow of information, such a huge amount of information coming in, that decisions are often, you really can't calculate what pushes a voter or a group of voters to move in a particular direction. So these successfully, I think there's a huge potential for these kind of campaigns. And I'd like to say that this is not exactly very new, in the sense that I think there
Right.
are other companies, other organizations across the world, a lot of whom are actually specializing in this kind of work, who are providing this kind of consultancy services with a mixture of large number of humans who are actually doing this work, and some amount of technological backup which actually enables the creation of these accounts, the pushing of these messages, etc., etc. So that is what we're seeing in terms of campaign, and that is what the claims are. Obviously very disturbing in the sense that, because I think that it's an insight into the kind of work, and of course there are close ties with Israel, because one of the companies associated with this person is listed in the Israeli MOD's list of companies which are listed in the defense export companies or whatever. So again, Israel once again being put in the spot after Pegasus as one of these exporters of this kind of dirty tricks department, so
Right.
to speak. Yeah.
So, Prashant, I can't help but wonder, what do people do and what are their governments doing while the newspapers expose this year after year? It's become a regular feature. So, what's going on there?
Right. So it's a mixed bag, because on the one hand, of course, like you said, there are these revelations happen, and each revelation puts let's take various categories. First, there are the social media companies.
Right.
So time and again, these revelations really show that the social media companies, the big tech giants, really have no handle on what their products are. They're easy to manipulate. However much they claim that you're fighting disinformation, you're fighting fake news, the fact that their model is centered on the spreading of this is something we've always been talking
Right.
about, and that is what is happening now here as well. So there, very clearly, once again, their failures are very clearly being put to light. As far as governments are concerned, I think there's often a question of political will over here, because many of the governments or many of the leading parties across the world actually do employ exactly these same kind of agencies and these same kind of methods. Sometimes they may be internal, they may not even need an external consultant, right? Sometimes they may be internal. So that is actually, I think, a big problem as well. So there's in many ways there's sometimes less incentive for governments to crack down on some of these kinds of. It's good as long as it's a foreign player, doing this kind of stuff. But when your own party is doing it, then there's actually sometimes very little incentive to crack down on this. So, like it or not, this has actually become, in some sense, unfortunately, a kind of part of the political toolkit, so to speak, of many leading parties and politicians across the world. And I think for people, the important thing is, I think it calls for more awareness, more organizing, more clarity on the role social media and news of a particular kind is playing in dividing themselves and polarizing. So this is not really, I think, there might be some regulatory solutions that are possible. It's not impossible. But I think some of these issues are also, some of these also have to be countered from bottom,
Right.
they can't be top-down solutions in the sense. They have to be community-based solutions, community-based organizing, which kind of identifies what are the key issues in the information ecosystem of our world, in how information is transmitted, how we consume it, how we understand news. Those models need to be sort of challenged, broken, new models come out with.
Right, Prashant, and thanks a lot for joining us. An Indonesian military court examining the role of 10 people, including 6 soldiers, in killing 4 West Papuan civilians last year has found 4 soldiers guilty. Civil society groups welcome the ruling, which follows a recent guilty charge in the same case against another soldier. Anish from People's Dispatch has been following this case, which has its roots in the conflict between Indonesia and the Free Papua movement in West New Guinea. He joins us with more. Anish, thanks for joining us. Anish, can you give us an update of the incident in Indonesia, what the court has said?
Well, the court has clearly gone by an earlier order that it gave last month, where the first accused, the prime accused of the case, was given a life sentence, and it has given the same kind of treatment with the four soldiers now. Now, pretty much all the army accused those involved in the army who were accused of the killing, and at least the ones that are alive have been judged, have been sentenced, and given the harshest punishment possible by the military courts. Now, it was two different military courts, we need to remember, but yeah, this is a significant victory. It is something quite rare in Indonesia. I mean, pretty much anywhere around the world where you do not see the kind of uh, crimes that soldiers and military officials commit, especially in an occupied region. And very often the crimes are overlooked. There aren't even prosecutions to begin with, let alone any kind of justice or a semblance of justice to the victims. But in this case, the judges took the decision, and the verdict was to give them the harshest punishment. And considering the fact the details of this case, it was quite gruesome. We're talking about four people who were dismembered, likely tortured, and then buried. Not exactly buried, but were dumped in sacks by these people, including the four other civilians who are being charged and tried and in a civilian court separately in Jaipura. Was quite gruesome to the point that it actually shocked the whole of Indonesia and its civil society at the time. And so, definitely, the kind of outrage that happened on the ground was something that maybe the judges in the military court sort of uh, uh, could absorb or could understand at the moment, and they definitely went for this decision. It happened in August, and so like the incident happened in August, so the kind of speed at which it also went was also quite remarkable to begin with. So yes, so definitely the manner in which civil society groups, human rights groups in the region, in not just those operating in West Papua but also across Indonesia, are welcoming it is primarily because of the manner in which it was prompt. The prosecution happened, and not just that, justice was also delivered at the end in a very timely manner. Is something that surprised many actually with the judgments.
Right, Anish, can you also give us a background to West Papua and Indonesia, what their dispute over there is, and also what explains this decision, why it is a ruling in favor of penalizing the military officers?
Yeah, so obviously we talked about this, but a long time ago, obviously, about how the conflict has happened. Obviously, the Papuan people in West Papua, or parts or the six provinces that we know that Indonesia has created in West Papua, have always had this very fraught relationship with Indonesia, because they were obviously part of the Dutch East Indies under the Dutch colonial rule, and the decolonization in West Papua happened quite a long time after Indonesia gained its independence. There was a different political culture, and so when it did eventually join or was forcibly annexed by Indonesia as part of its territory in the 1960s, the late 1960s, it definitely had a very violent annexation, and to the point where even the referendum that they talk about, that Indonesia often uses as as the reason for its occupation of the region, is something that was quite compromised you had a few couple of thousands voting, and all of them were literally voting on the one point. So that history remains, the memory of that history remains, and its legacy is definitely the sort of violence that we see happening very often. The current spate of violence that has happened in the region began in sometimes around 2019 August, when Papuan students, both in the West Papua region and across Indonesia, protested against certain racist violence that some of their brethren faced in the mainland. And the protest kind of grew into a more, a more anti-racist protest in West Papua that actually was violently repressed, and that actually created a sort of chain of reaction that led to not only ethnic tensions but also armed violence as well, both from with the Indonesian government doubling down its military occupation of the region. There were even extended periods of time when internet or telecommunications was also cut down just during this period. So this was an especially violent period, which was followed by sporadic violence, but very gruesome set of violence that we have seen, where even civilians of not just the Papuan people, but also mainland settlers in the region facing the brunt of it. So this is the situation that it is now. So obviously, at a time like this, a military court, judges, a panel of judges, or two different panels of judges in two different military courts, actually making a same assessment of showing that these officers not only violated their oath, not only of protecting citizens of the Indonesian government, but also of tarnishing relations between the Indonesian military, the armed forces, and the Papuan people is something that is quite significant, because, as I said, prosecutions are rare, let alone bringing them to justice.
Anish, thanks a lot for joining us, and I'll request you to stay with us for another couple of minutes as we come back to you for our next segment. Visits of US military officials to Taiwan continue as a top Pentagon official landed in Taiwan, both countries taking a tight-lipped approach to the visit. A Taiwan opposition leader visited China with a delegation focused on a variety of issues, and now a return visit from China to Taiwan is on. We return to Anish from People's Dispatch to explain the significance of these multiple exchanges. Anish, thanks for staying with us. So, Anish, 3 visits between China and Taiwan, and one from the US Pentagon official to Taiwan. Why this flurry of activity on that part of the world?
I mean, obviously, it is important considering the fact that we have seen this level of tensions that have happened over Taiwan and between Taiwan and China, obviously, and between China and the US. So these visits are definitely a culmination of many of these tensions that have already happened, and also certain recent political developments that we have also talked about, especially the local elections in Taiwan, where the opposition bloc has, sort of swept the elections and even some of the major cities in the region in Taiwan. So obviously that has changed a lot. This is the first time that both a U.S. delegation, such a high-level U.S. delegation from its Defense Department, is visiting Taiwan, and on the other hand, it's also the first visit by any Chinese officials to Taiwan, even though it is not at an official level, but as in, like, there are no federal officials involved, but it is a significant visit considering the fact that it is officials from the Taiwan Affairs Council from China visiting Taiwan. So these are definitely two different significant meetings and visits happening on two different levels. We have the government being completely silent at this point. It is not giving out any details about the Pentagon's visit today. Obviously, this visit was something that anybody who has been observing the Taiwan region knew about for the past few days. It was something that the US was also, if not completely forthcoming about it, they were hinting at this visit for a while now, but the silence from Taiwanese part, the Taiwanese government shows that it is definitely something that has to do with far more serious subjects like defense cooperation in a different scale that may not have been seen in the region. On the other hand, the Chinese visit to Taiwan right now is sort of a reciprocal visit that, as you mentioned, happened already between a Taiwan delegation to China. So,
Right.
and so this is we have to remember that the Chinese delegation right now is there on invitation of the Taipei City Administration, which is now led by Kuomintang, which leads the opposition bloc in Taiwan, and which has been labeled by several Western media as pro-China, but is more on a very pragmatic, which has a very pragmatic and a set of foreign policy matters where they do not want confrontations with the mainland government, but wants to have smooth sailing trade and diplomatic relations on one side, and also maintaining a certain common set of understanding with the mainland, with the government in Beijing over Taiwan sovereignty and also over Chinese sovereignty over Taiwan as a whole. So it is sort of a very complicated history. Obviously, we can't get into it right now, but this is there is a certain set of um, distinction in which the government in Taiwan operates, where it has been not only entertaining but also advocating for a sort of secessionist policy, where it wants to declare or supports positions that wants to declare Taiwan as an independent country and not a Chinese country. And on the other hand, you have the opposition-led bloc, which is now emboldened with its recent electoral victory, which is now looking for alternative policies where tensions can come down and where smooth sailing relations. And we have already seen with the Taiwanese visit recently that happened, the Chinese officials opened up certain trade relations, reopened actually certain trade relations and allowed for certain agricultural imports from Taiwan because of this visit, and that is something that their state media obviously spoke about, but wasn't really taken up by many of the mainstream outlets. So this is the sort of things that are happening. It is significant because these are two different. Like you already have the opposition and the government trying to formulate foreign policy issues, something that is not being seen so far in Taiwan since the fall of the dictatorship in the 80s. And it is significant also because with the upcoming elections, this will also be a major political plank when the national elections in Taiwan happens. So we need to wait and see how things work out. But we are seeing definitely two different, if not different, but very competing plans and blueprints happening right now.
Thanks a lot for joining us with that update, Anish. And that's all we have for today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us on Monday. You can find more such stories on our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and our regular updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.